This week, our ace political panel debates Homeland Security funding, Netanyahu's upcoming speech before Congress, and the long list of presidential hopefuls at CPAC 2015. Joining me, Jack Burkman, Republican strategist and host of Behind the Curtain with Jack Burkman. Catch him every Saturday night on the Radio America Network and Sunday afternoons at 2 on WMAL in Metro D.C. Also, Mark Levine, Democratic strategist, a former top lawyer to Congressman Barney Frank, and talk show host on Pacifica Radio. All right, this week, shocking news from the FBI about the threat of self-radicalization in this country.
Those people exist in every state. Right? I have homegrown violent extremist investigations in every single state. Right? Until a few weeks ago, there was 49 states. Alaska had none, which I couldn't quite figure out. But Alaska has now joined the group. So we have investigations of people in various stages of radicalizing in all 50 states.
Meanwhile, the House and Senate have been locked in a bitter battle over immigration reform measures that were tied to Homeland Security funding.
I think that we must accept the fact that this is I don't know if it's crazy people, it's like an 8th grade civics class. I mean, what is going on in the House? We have the two leaders who haven't talked to each other in 2 weeks. This is not a very good situation, and we're not going to be part of their petty games.
Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid throwing jabs at House Speaker John Boehner. Meanwhile, Boehner was dodging questions about a vote on a clean bill.
Are you going to put it on the floor? Are you going to kill it? Are you going to let him vote on it? Have you even had this discussion?
When we make decisions, I'll let you know.
At Jeopardy were more than 200,000 people working without pay unless the House passed a clean funding bill for DHS. Jack, Republicans again risk taking blame for another shutdown. This could all be cleared up by now, but what's going on?
Well, you're right, Morris. It's a political loser, but I'm going to call upon the party to do the right thing. You know, you just can't let the president end run the entire immigration reform process. I mean, he did with a stroke of a pen right before Christmas with his 2 executive orders what should have taken a year in Congress. He thinks he's some kind of god or some kind of king. We can't allow it. I think John Boehner's right in this instance. I think Ted Cruz is right in this instance. McConnell's wrong. I want to stand and fight. Shut down Homeland Security. Block his executive orders. Let's fight this battle. Let's find a way to win it politically.
Mark, was this kind of like sequestration with everybody saying, oh, ISIS is going to overrun the country? You already heard from FBI Director Comey about self-radicalization. Was this just a scare tactic the administration was using to get all this Homeland Security money passed?
I don't think the terrorist threat to the United States is a scare tactic. I think this is childish of the Republicans in Congress. It seems like every day they want to shut down Congress. They claim to care about protecting Homeland Security, and they don't want to fund Homeland Security.
But those are critical jobs. Those would continue to go on, though. That's the problem. We're not going to be without guards at airports.
Most of it, frankly, would continue. The other thing people have to remember is about 80% of the DHS budget, the Homeland Security budget, is all for the southwest border. So this is what we're talking about. I mean, for God's sakes, the border is so porous now. I'm not sure what Homeland Security does at this
Jack,
point.
That's inconsistent.
I'm not sure they do anything.
You complain that there's not enough border enforcement, and then you want to shut down border enforcement. Look, the Senate voted for this bill 98-2. Every American, they don't want to fight this battle. They simply want the government to be funded. I don't know why the Republicans keep shooting themselves in the foot every year.
What I want is border enforcement that'll work. We don't have any border enforcement. We're spending billions of dollars.
Of course we do, but far more than George Bush did.
All right, let's switch gears. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address Congress this upcoming Tuesday, but the speech won't be without controversy. House Speaker Boehner broke protocol and invited the leader without the consent of the White House, furthering tensions between the Obama administration and Israel. Jack, was that a smart move? A majority of Americans say going around the White House was a bad call.
I think it was a very good move, Morris. You know, Israel feels isolated. They feel abandoned. Obama has done everything he can to abandon our main ally in the Mideast. Where would we be without Israel in the Mideast? I mean, at this point, we don't have another single ally. Even Saudi Arabia and the U.S. relations have cooled. Thank God he did. We have to get those relations back on track. It's essential to our entire policy in the region.
Now, President Obama has said he would not meet with Netanyahu during his visit. Vice President Biden won't be in town. Neither will Secretary of State John Kerry. Now there's a growing list of Democrats that won't attend Netanyahu's speech, even some Jewish lawmakers. Mark, What's your take on this boycott? Could it make Dems seem less supportive of U.S.-Israeli relations?
I think this whole thing is silly and political and shows how the Republicans care more about creating silly political issues than real issues. There was an easy way around this. You simply bring Netanyahu here after his election on March 17th and before the conclusion of the Iranian negotiations on March 31st. That would have helped everyone save face. Boehner didn't offer that to Netanyahu. It's a very important. I agree with
Mark,
Jack. It's very important. Oh, hang on. Let me just finish, Jack. I think it's very important to keep Iran, this theocratic, dangerous terrorist dictatorship, from getting nuclear weapons, and all that's being overshadowed by this silly breach of protocol.
Jack, here's my question to you. Prime Minister Netanyahu is also locked in a close re-election campaign, as we just heard. Is it possible that his appearance in the U.S. has more to do with politics than the actual threat from Iran?
Oh, I mean, I'm a cynic, Morris. Yes, of course. Every appearance everywhere by any major leader has more to do with politics than anything else. Look at what Obama did at 2008 when he was effectively campaigning in Europe, trying to make himself look like a statesman. But listen to what Mark is saying. He's talking about the timing of when Boehner can invite him. But
after the election, before the
why isn't? Here's the question: why won't the President of the United States treat Netanyahu and Israel properly? Why isn't the president doing this? Why is all of this in Congress's court? That's the question.
Because Boehner issued the invitation. All he had to do was issue the invitation.
But
2
why
weeks
won't
later,
the president issue any invitations?
The molehill goes away.
The president won't issue any invitations.
Well, it's to speak before Congress. Actually, Boehner controls who speaks before Congress. That's my whole point. They took a really important issue and made it into something that's political pettiness.
Look, we're good about making predictions and making news, even though it may not be this month, this year. But let's look into the future. There have been several analysts who I admire that think that Iran's going to get the bomb, that the Obama administration will sort of, with a wink and a nod, let them have somewhat of a bomb in the next few years after the administration is out of office. Mark, do you think that's the case, or are we just hearing a lot of noise from these so-called analysts?
I certainly hope not. I do think Netanyahu's speech is important. That's why I wish it hadn't been overshadowed by this political protocol pettiness. Mark the alliteration there. No, it is an important thing. I don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon, and there's a very important discussion about how much sanctions we can do and how much they should be allowed to do. Again, the policy is getting trumped by the politics.
Jack, any predictions whether Iran gets the bomb, whether it be now or 10 years from now?
I think they're going to have it in some version of very soon. Very soon it's coming. I mean, between Obama and Angela Merkel and David Cameron, Obama's bought into this European view. Why not arm Iran? Somehow they think that'll make the region safer. It's absolutely ridiculous. What Obama has done is he's put the U.S. in such a weak position that there's no form of diplomacy, no form of sanctions that can stop this process. What could happen is you'll have a Republican president in 2016, and in 2017, the only option will be force. We're going to have to go in and do some bombing and hit the refineries. We're going to have to do what we can. Only bombing will stop Iran from acquiring a nuclear capacity.
Yeah, I remember when George Bush allowed North Korea to have a nuclear weapon while I worked in Congress. None of these crazy states should have a nuclear weapon.
All right, let's talk about CPAC 2015. This week, the who's who of the Republican Party have gathered at National Harbor to discuss the state of the nation. Among the list of guest speakers is every potential 2016 presidential hopeful. Senator Ted Cruz, Dr. Ben Carson, and even Governor Scott Walker and Chris Christie, just to name a few. Walker seems to be getting the highest poll numbers. Jack, is Walker your pick?
Walker is surging. I'm neutral on this, Morris. I'm going to stay out of this one, but I can tell you Scott Walker is very appealing. I think he's the person at this point, other than Paul Ryan, who would have been number one. I would have endorsed Ryan had he run, but I think Scott Walker is the person who has the chance to be the Ronald Reagan. He has most of those characteristics to go out and become the next Reagan. He's surging. Jeb Bush is a guy who's already fading. The party rank and file don't like him. They see him as another Mitt Romney, frankly, without all Romney's attributes.
Mark, as the Democratic consultant, if you're talking to the Democratic, whether it be Hillary Clinton or working for whomever the candidate's going to be on that side, who would you like to be running against as a Republican?
I'd be fine running against Scott Walker. I mean, I'd be fine running against any of them. But Scott Walker, I would argue the reason he's surging is because he's really filling the CPAC with extremist red meat. He said just the other day that he would be as tough on the ISIS terrorists as he was against working class people working in unions. I mean, he'd be as hard on the terrorists as he was on hardworking Americans.
Well, that's right. Public unions.
To me, that's really extreme that Republicans are comparing
the problem with that, Mark.
to ISIS.
People in public unions don't work hard. That's the problem with that.
Well, knowing how the terrorists are, ISIS may now unionize. That's what we're going to see.
You know, I mean,
Also
the fact that Republicans conflate the two tells you exactly what's wrong with their party.
Also
Morris.
making an appearance at CPAC, real estate mogul Donald Trump. He recently told the Washington Post that he's seriously considering a run in 2016 as well. Mark, all of his competition on the Republican side, but Democrats seem to be placing all of their eggs in the Hillary Clinton basket. Is that the best idea?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump, if he runs, should put it as a reality show because that's all he is. It's a joke.
There might be more interest in that than the electorate
Well,
politics.
He's amusing, no question about it. He's amusing, but he's not
But
serious.
voter apathy, I'm serious.
I think it is going to be Hillary Clinton, and I think it is going to be Jeb Bush.
Oh, I
made
agree
that
with-
prediction right here at this studio a month ago, and I stick to it.
I have no prediction on the Republican side. I think Hillary will be the Democratic nominee almost surely in the absence of a liberal, and I don't see one. And frankly, the London line is for her to win. I mean, Romney had 206 electoral votes. We've got to add 64 to that. It's going to be very hard, even with a very popular candidate.
Interesting discussion. Jack Burkman, Republican strategist. Mark Levine, Democratic strategist. The best political panel on TV. Thanks to you both.
Thanks,
Thank you, Morris.
Thank you, Mark.
Jack.